Hi again, and welcome back to Storytime with Nana Lynn and Glow. We've been working on our book Another's Treasure by Mehl, and we're on chapter 27. So let's get going, see if we can figure out the riddle, and see how Elizabeth's date goes and what happens with Bill and Mary, and let's just see what happens. After Elizabeth left, Mary grabbed her purse, got the keys to Elizabeth's car, and snuck out without telling Martha where she was going. She didn't want to explain ahead of time, but she was determined to set things right. Sharing her plan with her sisters might make her change her mind. This was something she needed to do, no matter how frightened she was. She got into the car, said a prayer, and headed to town. As silly as it sounded in Elizabeth's mind, she had somehow expected John to wear his uniform on their date. She realized that she'd been so worried about how she looked, she'd never considered that he would wear civilian clothes when he was off duty. Although she held the menu in front of her, she could not stop looking at him. He was dressed in light blue polo shirt and dark blue slacks. The shirt brought out his blue eyes and black hair. He was even more handsome out of uniform. Elizabeth kept wondering why someone like him would be interested in her. He could get any woman he wanted. Why wasn't he married? Why wasn't he dating someone else? Why had he asked her out? She kept trying to push the questions away, but they would sneak back in without her even realizing it. "Have you decided?" he asked her with a smile. She quickly lowered her eyes to the menu, even though she hadn't actually looked at it. "I think I'll go with the pecan-crusted tilapia. It's delicious." He nodded. "It is good. Hard to pick, but I feel like having roast beef. Never had a bad meal here." Elizabeth had just closed the menu and put it on the table when the waitress walked up. They gave her their orders, and she took the menus away. "So, what did you think of the play?" John asked. Elizabeth smiled. "I loved it. I haven't been to the theater for years. I forgot how much I enjoy it." "May I ask you why you stayed away for so long?" "Yes, taking care of elderly parents. My mother died a few months ago." "Your sisters didn't help you?" "Well, they lived in other states. After Mama passed away, they came here to live. We decided to reopen the second-hand store that my grandmother started years ago." "You've been through a lot, Elizabeth," he said. "It must have been hard." "It really wasn't that bad. When you love someone, caring for them it's a blessing. I adored my mother, and I miss her every day." John nodded. "My wife was sick for a long time. I kept working until I couldn't. Being there for her at the end was something I wanted to do more than anything else in the world. I had no idea you'd been married." He smiled. "It was a long time ago. Carol's been gone almost 15 years now. Funny how grief changes, but it doesn't ever go away." "I know exactly what you mean," Elizabeth said. "Some people don't understand that." "No, they don't. Do you have any children, John?" This time his smile had no hint of sadness. "Yes, I do. My son Jonathan is in college, and Tina is still in high school." "And in all these years, you never married again?" He shook his head. "I felt I needed to concentrate on the kids. I've dated some, but I've never found anyone that I felt was the right person for me." He chuckled. "Being perfectly honest, I'm not sure I even know what that means anymore." "Well, I understand completely. I was engaged once, but now..." Elizabeth clasped her hands in front of her. "I have no idea what I want, or if I'll ever find the right person to be with. I haven't thought about it for years." Well, John picked up his glass and held it out. "Well, here's to navigating the dangerous waters of dating." Elizabeth laughed and picked up her water glass, touching it lightly against his. They each took a sip and put their glasses down. "I'm having such a good time, John. Thanks for asking me." "Well, I'm having a great time too, and I hope we can do this again." "I do too." Elizabeth was surprised by how relaxed she felt. With John, she didn't feel as if she was on a date. Instead, she was sharing an enjoyable evening with a friend. She was so grateful she'd decided to say yes to his invitation. Since they'd both been honest about their past, the pressure had been lessened. "I wish I had some news about your break-in," he said. "But so far, we haven't gotten a lead." Elizabeth's heart sank. She should have contacted him right away after Eleanor Wallace had confessed to them. She'd been so distracted by other things that she'd totally forgotten. "Oh, John, I'm so sorry. You're going to think I'm the biggest ditz in the world." The waitress came by at that moment to freshen their coffee. And when she left, he smiled at her. "I doubt I'm going to think anything like that, but tell me why you think I should." She took a deep breath. "Because there wasn't a break-in. Well, I mean, I guess there was, but..." He frowned at her. "Either there was or there wasn't, Elizabeth. It has to be one way or the other." I know. Let me think how to explain." She cleared her throat and began. "The woman who broke into our barn was a distraught mother looking for something for her sick child." John looked confused. "Wouldn't it have been better to shop when you were open?" Well, even though the conversation was serious, Elizabeth couldn't hold back a nervous giggle. "No, that's not what I meant." She shook her head. "I'm sorry. For some reason, I'm being obtuse." She looked at him directly. "Warren Smucker had a painting in his house. He promised his housekeeper, Elaine Wallace, that when he died, her daughter Kelly could have it. It's a copy of a famous painting, but it's not valuable. It's just something Kelly loved. When he died, Anita gave it to us to sell. Then, when she thought it might be worth a great deal of money, she took it back without telling us. We thought it had been stolen and that we would be liable for it." "I'm sorry," John said in a low voice, "but I don't understand what this has to do with anything." "Oh, you will when I finish." He nodded at her to continue. "Well, anyway, Eleanor found out that we had the painting and came when we were open looking for it. When we told her we didn't have it, she thought we were lying. So she broke into your barn looking for it?" "Yes, that's it." "That's still against the law. Everyone has a reason for breaking into someone else's property. That doesn't make it legal." "Well, no, it doesn't. Kelly has leukemia." Eleanor was just distraught. She was trying to get the painting for Kelly so it would make her happy. And didn't you think to tell me this? You or your sisters?" "It's stupid. We've just been so distracted." She suddenly remembered the feeling the other night when she'd forgotten something. Now she knew what it was. "I'm so happy. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. Somewhere inside, I knew I needed to let you know about Eleanor. But with everything else going on, it got pushed out of my mind." "Thankfully," he smiled. "Well, I'm glad you weren't really robbed. But promise me the next time something like this happens, you'll let me know." Relieved that he wasn't angry, Elizabeth chuckled. "I promise. But hopefully nothing like this will ever happen again. Most thieves don't pick secondhand shops as places to target. We don't usually have the kinds of items they're looking for." "Good," he frowned. "So what happened with the picture?" "Anita Smucker gave it to Eleanor, and now Kelly has the painting. So it turned out well. I'm glad." "Me too." The waitress brought their food, so they turned their attention to the dinner. When they finished eating, they talked for a while and then went outside and got into John's car. They'd just turned onto the street outside the restaurant when John's cell phone rang. He answered it and seemed concerned about what he was hearing. When he hung up, he turned to look at her. "I'm really very sorry, but we just got a call from Bird in Hand, and I'm the closest. Everyone else is busy somewhere else. Do you mind? It's not a violent crime. If you'd rather, I can take you home first." "I don't mind at all. Please do what you need to do." Although stopping by a crime scene hadn't been on their agenda, Elizabeth found it interesting. Besides, since she knew most of the people in Bird in Hand, she was concerned that one of her neighbors might be in trouble. John turned down a couple of streets and drove through a well-known neighborhood. Elizabeth stayed silent until he parked in front of the house that she was very familiar with, Uriah Barnhart's. "Can you tell me why we're here?" "Do you know Mr. Barnhart?" Elizabeth nodded. He called the station to say that he'd been robbed. Someone stole something valuable. I believe he said it was a Civil War sword. Elizabeth just looked at him, not knowing what to say. Just stay here. I'll be right back. As she watched him walk around the house, all she could think about was Mary saying that they should break into Uriah's house and steal the sword. Had she actually done it? Well, that's the end of chapter 27. And as I said, things are getting more and more and more intense, and they're trying to lead us down different paths. And could this happen? And could that? And that makes a good book, in my opinion. So I will see you in the next video where we will continue looking for clues. Bye now.